In case you missed it, Dow Constantine, the county executive of King County, which is home to Seattle and has one of the highest rates of homelessness in the nation, gave a State of the County address in which he made a statement that has blown up on social media and has started a lot of conversation. Here it is.
Widely held belief is that behavioral health issues like untreated mental health or substance use disorders are root causes of the homelessness crisis that we see all around us. This is wrong. University of Washington researcher Gregg Colburn has shown that the cause of the homelessness phenomenon is not individual challenges, but a housing market failure.
Okay, so after spending about 7 minutes talking about the mental health crisis facing King County and the opioid overdose crisis facing King County, Dow Constantine chooses to make it very clear that if you think these things, untreated mental illness, addiction, are causes of the homelessness in King County, you're wrong. And to prove that you're wrong, he cites a book by Gregg Colburn, a researcher at the University of Washington, titled "Homelessness is a Housing Problem." Millions of people have listened to this clip, and the majority reaction is frustration, and I think that's a warranted reaction. I want to spend just a few minutes talking through the research being referenced here. The stated goal of Colburn's work is to determine what factors explain the wide range of rates of homelessness in cities across the U.S. For example, San Francisco has one of the highest rates of homelessness in the nation. Detroit has one of the lowest. Are there trends that can help us explain that? And Colburn makes it clear from the start that he's not interested in individual factors, which he refers to as vulnerabilities, that make an individual person vulnerable to homelessness. Those would be things like mental illness, addiction, domestic violence, or poverty. Rather, he's focused on citywide or even statewide factors that might explain the difference in rates of homelessness. These would be things like weather, politics, social services, and the housing market. Colburn compares regions across the U.S. looking for trends and finds that there is no convincing relationship between states' rates of mental illness and homelessness. However, in the very same section, he states clearly that, and I'm quoting, "This observation does not suggest that mental illness doesn't contribute to homelessness at an individual level. The findings are very similar with drug use, no clear relationship to homelessness when states are compared, but that doesn't mean it's not important on an individual level." Earlier in his book, Colburn actually acknowledges that, and here's another quote, "Indeed, ample evidence suggests that substance abuse is not only a cause of homelessness, but also a consequence." There are important questions for us to be asking here. Are we talking about trends among individuals who are homeless or trends across an entire state? Are statewide trends even helpful when homelessness is often concentrated in much smaller regions? Are we looking at factors that are causal or are they just correlated? Is our metric for success simply numbers of subsidized housing units filled, or is it something more, health, independence, community? And depending on what we're talking about, some data is helpful and some data tells us almost nothing. What seems abundantly clear is that it can't be true that for all of the factors contributing to all kinds of different populations experiencing homelessness and different kinds of homelessness, there's just one solution that will solve all of it: subsidized housing. It's one thing to ask what the data says, but data only gets us so far. Another, maybe more important question to ask is what we do with that data as a response. For example, Colburn's data shows us that homelessness rates decrease where rates of poverty are high. This is what the data reveals, but what do we do with that data? Do we recommend increasing poverty in order to decrease homelessness? Obviously, that would be a huge misunderstanding and misuse of that data. I hope it's clear that based on Executive Dow Constantine's own source of research and data, dismissing outright the role of addiction and untreated mental illness in our homelessness crisis is entirely unfounded. I think that the strongest refutation of Dow's statement is an appeal to the same authority that he appealed to. But apart from Gregg Colburn's work, there are a number of other realities that really confront the statement that housing affordability is the single cause and the single solution to homelessness. Here are just two of those realities. According to one of the largest nonpartisan studies on street-level homelessness done in the U.S., half of the homeless population self-report that their mental illness or substance use played a causal role in their homelessness. And second, King County has been operating from this standpoint, that housing solves homelessness for years. In fact, the whole nation has been operating from this standpoint for at least a decade. And you would think that if it were true that housing does actually solve homelessness, then years and years and years of getting people into subsidized housing would have had a significant impact on homelessness. And yet we saw the highest increase in homelessness at a national level on record in history last year, 12%. And we continue to see significant year-over-year increases in homelessness in King County. There was a 23% increase this year. Gregg Colburn claims that varying rates of homelessness in cities across the U.S. are best explained by the housing market, by the cost of rent and rental vacancy rates. And critiques of that analysis aside, no one is against housing that is affordable for our population and our community. But if there are people who are homeless for merely financial reasons, there are also people trapped in a cycle of homelessness because of their addiction and untreated mental illness. While a subsidized apartment may help the person who is homeless for purely financial reasons, it could be a death sentence to the person with an active fentanyl addiction. Surely, no strings attached, free housing for everyone is not the answer. We need a thriving housing market and robust, immediate treatment for those with untreated mental illness and addiction. Both of those things can be true at the same time. And after spending hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on homelessness, Dow Constantine has the nerve to tell the public that the reality they're all seeing with their own eyes, right in front of them, untreated mental illness and addiction, keeping people where they are on the streets, is not actually reality, and that we need to continue investing millions into the single acceptable solution, subsidized housing. I think the people of King County have every right to call out the failure of this view and hold accountable elected leaders that continue to push it.